Me, 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 me.
I never get used to that.
So me. Are we live, Jenny? We're live. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. It's Jeff Talks RPGs, episode 11, Horror Adventures. Today on the show, I've got Beth the Bard, recently published She is the Ancient, the gender-bent Curse of Strahd book that's just gone crazy on the DMs Guild. And I've got Phil Beckwith of PB Publishing, The Haunt. If you've played any horror game on the Dungeon Master Guild, it's going to be The Haunt. Recently published is The Haunt Trilogy Special Edition, which has some cool little paper cutouts, right? Some paper minis. Yep, there's one right there. Very cool. And so I want to introduce. Like I said, today we're going to talk about horror adventures, but let me introduce, let the guests talk about themselves for a while. I want to start with Beth. Tell me about yourself, Beth. What you do in D&D, and also about She is the Ancient.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Beth the Bard. Little spiel. You can find me everywhere at It's Beth the Bard. That's like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Discord, Ko-Fi, like all the things, right? We all have 13 social media channels or something like that. I'm a professional dungeon master. It's my full-time job. I work with mostly teenagers. I run like 11 sessions a week. It's wild, and yes, I somehow keep them all organized. I also made my DM's Guild debut almost a month ago exactly with She is the Ancient, a gender-bent Curse of Strahd. But it's not like how much of an intro? Just like a quick intro?
Oh, no, just give it. All right, so let me go from there. What gave you the idea for that? For rewriting Strahd?
So when I got into D&D, it was only a few years ago. I was like, hey, look, it's a vampire story. Ooh, and my teenage heart was like, yes, I would love that. So I decided to live out those childhood dreams and run it. And as I was reading it, I was like, no, it's not going to work. So I started changing it in order to run it for my family at first, and then for groups of teenagers and stuff like that. And my initial idea was like, what if we just gender bent it all to kind of show how ridiculous some of these tropes and concepts are? Like, just gender bend it, don't make any other changes. And people were like, this is ridiculous. And I'm like, I know. So then I was like, well, let's actually make it more dynamic and make sense to those changes. So I ended up going through rewriting the backstory, changing a bunch of the narrative, kind of trying to eliminate the sexism, racism, ableism, targeted violence against women and children, things like that. And then after running that for a bunch of different groups, I was like, well, it's all in my head. I'll make it into a PDF in case anyone else is interested.
That's done extremely well. Electrum in 30 days. It's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, let me go to Phil now. Oh, whoa. Okay, so you already mentioned your social media. I'm sorry. Phil, tell me about you, how you got into the DMs Guild and the Haunt trilogy.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Okay, so I'm Phil Beckwith. I'm a head honcho at PB Publishing. I've been on the DMs Guild publishing for about 4 or 5 years now, since 2016. So I've been around for a while. And I guess most notably, I've launched and released the Haunt and the Haunt trilogy. So I've been, I guess, freelance writing as well recently. I've been working with Goodman Games a lot, a bit of sort of old school style role playing in that respect. But yeah, getting into D&D. D&D 5th edition is my first edition, so I am one of these new age newbies that are going to probably get all flustered when the new edition comes out and right. Everything else. But so I've been around for a while on DM's Guild.
Yeah, the D&D celebration over the weekend, they announced the potential of a 5.5 or a 6E, which is basically, I think they're saying it's going to stay 5E compatible. So it's just going to be some updates, I think, to the current system.
Be fine.
So
we'll be fine.
We'll be okay.
Yeah, if anyone wants to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at PB Publishing One, or search for me on DM's Guild or Drive Through RPG. I've got stuff everywhere, so go have a look.
And I am Jeff Stevens, Jeff Stevens Games. So back in 2016, when Phil had the Haunt, well, the Haunt came out in 2017, wasn't it? Or was it 2016?
Yeah, I think it was February 2017.
Yeah. And I had the House of the Midnight Violet, and that was my best horror seller at the time. And then the Haunt comes out, and then I've had this unspoken rivalry with Phil ever since the Haunt came out, because he always beat me in sales. Every Halloween, his would always be above mine, and now it's like it's still that way. I mean, right now we've got She is the Ancient as the number 2 spot in adventures right now,
killing everybody.
Number 4, the Haunt trilogy. Number 19, the Haunt itself, and then mine, number 24, the Madhouse of Tasha's Kiss. So, I'm runner up here. I got first, second place right here, and then I've got runner up. But
I have a feeling that'll change in the next few weeks, Jeff.
Well, I'm not hoping so, Phil. I like seeing you succeed, and both of you succeed. But it's fun to. I think it's fun to compete a little bit, here and there,
Sure.
and have that little bit of camaraderie between people. Like, I hope I beat Phil Beckwith this week. Come on, I need more sales. But today we're talking about horror adventures. Excuse me. And there's recent publications out there. Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft talks a lot about running horror adventures. And then there's an article that I mentioned in my last show, How to Make D&D Scary, by F. Wesley Schneider, that's on the Dungeon Master, or the D&D blog. You can find it out there. Just type How to Make D&D Scary, and I think it'll pop up on Google. And so both of these talk about how to make D&D scary. And I can see tropes or the ways that I've introduced some of these without knowing it in some of the adventures that I wrote, just because I enjoy writing horror. And I've done spooky stories, where the story is the characters learn the story as they go through the mansion. I've done with Brimley Farr, we did a lot of the body horror with Madhouse of Tasha's Kiss, Happy Jack's Funhouse, Annalise's Revenge, and they're just a little bit different. And in the Madhouse of Tasha's Kiss, I was using some of the insanity or the madness tools and doing madness checks, because some of the images they were gonna see and experience were just so horrifying that any individual would be like, whoa, this is what is this, what's going on, where it could set them back a little bit within the game. So what are some of the things now, Beth, you've run a lot of D&D, it sounds like. So how do you introduce horror into the game? How do you portray horror in D&D? Because one of the things they've said is D&D isn't meant for horror, because as you go through the game, you level up and you get stronger and better throughout the game, which makes it harder for you to perceive that threat at the end, as a real threat. Because, pretty well everybody who's gone Curse of Strahd has probably killed Strahd. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, just like with any other game though too, you just increase the threats and the horror. Like the way I've kind of done it with Curse of Strahd is, I don't come right off the bat with everything. I, save it and they level up, and I throw in, it's like, okay, so here's some more of that. But so what I do think that D&D is totally compatible, because D&D at its core is just a storytelling game. And the mechanics, to me anyways, as a dungeon master, mechanics are secondary. The story is totally first. And there's this really cool article by Ash Law. Look it up. It's called oh no, what's it called? Oh no, I forgot what it's called, but it's about horror and building horror, and I use it for everything. Like, just the ideas in there are, it's like using the 4 types of fear, right? So unease, dread, terror, and horror. So unease is that sense of like, hey, there's a broken cart over there and there's blood stains all over the ground. Oh, something's kind of wrong, so then building it up and saving that horror. I actually save horror more for I like you were saying, I try to level that up as they level up. And I try to keep it mostly between unease, dread, and terror, and just back and forth between those.
I don't know if you can hear this. My dog is whining next to me. I tried to take him out before the show. So he's bothering me right now. I'm gonna have to take a break. Would you two care to talk about the different ways you've used narrative within D&D while I'm out, to create?
Sure.
All right. I'm sorry.
Sure. Sorry, I got. No worries. Thanks, Jenny. So yeah, I guess in mine, a lot of it is around the atmosphere. Is trying to get the atmosphere at the table. I don't think that a mechanics or rule set are necessarily the most important thing when it comes to horror in a role-playing game. I really think it comes down to either delivery and also just getting the right vibe at the table. And probably setting some expectations earlier as well. If you set expectations, people are going to go into it thinking, I'm coming into this for the spoopies, so they're already in their mind, they're already thinking, what's going to happen? What am I going to get scared of? And tension will be there from the get-go. So I think tension is very important when it comes to setting horror up from the beginning, and then you can lean into that and pull on those strings when you need to. That's how I run it anyway. Sure. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Especially if there's anything that's going to be sort of trigger sensitive, I think is very important in that respect. I don't like to give it too much away. I guess knowing your audience is probably pretty important though. You don't want to be going too far with certain subjects, of course.
Well, that's why like a session 0 is like super critical.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, in any campaign, but definitely horror.
Definitely horror. That's right, because you're leaning into people's personal feelings about things, and I think that's really what keeps tension high, because that's when you get the buy-in, right? And I think there's certain techniques that you can probably use at the table. Dungeon mastering, it's more of a dungeon mastering technique thing than a rules-based thing, definitely.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like Monty Cook's Consent in Gaming, highly recommend. Just read it. read it. And there's like I believe that's where I get my chart, where I actually have a checklist when we do session 0, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna go, like, you can fill it out on your own and give it back to me, but also I'm gonna have one up on my screen and we're gonna go through it together and talk about this as a group, so that we get in there and somebody's like, I am not okay with children being harmed, and it's like, okay, well, let's talk about that. Are you okay with ghost children that have been harmed but you didn't see it and it's just part of the story? Yeah, that's fine, but like not actively, like we're not letting them get killed and baked into pies in front of us is the point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you're talking about safety tools, that type of thing right now?
Yes.
Yeah. Very important.
In fact, they do mention that in Van Richten's also about having like a survey ahead of time to make sure that the horror that you're going to bring into the game is something that the people want to participate in. I can see where someone who's experienced suicide in their life may not want to come across a suicide victim. Things that are triggers. And we don't always know the triggers that other people have. Some things are hidden. And so it's good to know that ahead of time if they want to share that. Because there are some situations where I don't think I would want to come across in a game. I think that would just kind of throw me off. And again, I apologize for having to step away. He didn't do anything while he was out. He just wanted to bug me, so I apologize. But I put him upstairs for now, and hopefully he doesn't bother me anymore for the rest of the show. He's a good dog.
All
his
dogs
name's
are
Buddy.
good dogs.
His name's Buddy, but he just likes to bother me.
I've got two of them.
Yeah, he feels left out. So we were talking about safety tools. Is there anything else you can think of there, as far as safety tools go? You know, you want to have the kind of horror adventure that your players want to be involved in, just make sure that that's the right fit for them. And a lot of DMs will know their players, but if you're coming across a new group, sometimes you may not understand or know their fears, their actual fears. For me, I think my daughter's afraid of spiders. And I think if I threw spiders in the game, she wouldn't mind. She would take it upon herself as, hey, this is my chance to kill a bunch of spiders. But if it was something more like a phobia, that really kind of threw her back, then I think that would be a little bit different. So it's really important to know your players.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
For sure.
100% agree there. Yeah, that's right. And I mean, I know my players because we've all been friends for a very, very long time. But even then, I still, if there's something I think that might be a little bit, I guess, trigger sensitive, I'll bring it up every time. Even past session 0, even if it's just coming up in the next normal session. I'll touch base with the team, say, look, how does this theme or this certain situation feel for everybody?
Yeah.
And
or you just change it without
issues.
You just change it without telling them, and they would never know.
Yeah, that's I like that. I like to push that, consent for things can be given in session 0, but it can be revoked later,
absolutely.
On the spot. And that's why, like you're talking about, after, there's a lot of crossover with horror stuff and like BDSM, right? So like aftercare, super critical in horror games. So just making sure, like, hey, feeling this out, were you okay with this? Was any of this uncomfortable? Let's talk about it. And okay, that's off the table for next time, or whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's good when your players are open about that too, and aren't afraid to share that with you. And I think that needs to be known across the table, that if somebody has an issue with something and it's brought up, that it's not going to be a problem. It's okay, we're going to change it from here, and no questions asked. We're going to go on and change the game and keep playing. But yeah, it really, it's both sides. I think it's both the DM and the player. They both have to be open about things that need to be changed or updated to the game to make it fun for everyone, because that's the idea, is the game is fun for everybody. We've already talked about your products, but so Beth, your horror writing started with just by reading Curse of Strahd, then wanting to make changes on that, correct?
Well, if we're gonna be real, it started when I was a kid and obsessed with everything by Guillermo del Toro. So
Okay.
But yes, professionally, that is when it started.
Very good. And then Phil, what got you into horror writing? Like what made you want to write horror?
I just honestly, with The Haunt was probably my first foray into horror, but it was originally a part of a sequel of the very first adventure I ever released, and it didn't end, and the sequel just didn't really go anywhere. But there was this haunted mansion there, and I looked at it and I was like, okay, I'm going to flesh this out and just release it as a singular module by itself, and that definitely worked way better. But I guess my background there, well, what some of the things I based the encounters off was do you guys remember an old PC game called The Seventh Guest?
No.
Right? Google it, and you'll probably find a lot of similarities with The Haunt, just the way the storytelling is, and with the visions and the way that the adventure tells us this background story as you progress through it, and it all comes in like sort of evocative ways. It's a really cool old school sort of a puzzle adventure as you walk around a haunted mansion. So that's I guess where a lot of my a lot of my ideas sort of came from there.
In The Haunt, because don't you have a cadaver where you have to put pieces back together on the cadaver in The Haunt?
Yes, yep.
I love that.
Yep. In the basement. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's
Yeah,
story
it's
elements,
it's a fun
within
one.
the haunt throughout, and that's pretty cool. I played it last
Hmm.
Halloween. We had a lot of fun with it.
Cool, thanks.
I just ordered my copy.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So there's a lot of talk about atmosphere, setting the atmosphere, setting the mood. I think that's somewhat important, but I think the narrative is really important when you're telling a horror story too, and the pacing of that narrative. Make it suspenseful, make it thrilling. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you want them to like feel that unease and that dread, and but not like themselves. But you want the characters to. I
Right.
think that's a big
Yeah,
difference. You want to scare the characters, not the players.
exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and a lot of that is character buy-in, also player buy-in into their character and saying, okay, well, this is going to scare my character, and
Yeah.
not always having the macho, I'm never going to get scared character. Things are
Murder
scary.
hobo.
Yeah. And one of the problems with D&D, when I've played D&D recently, is people don't know when to run.
Yeah.
They will
Yeah.
they will be up against an overpowering creature, and they're like, why are we getting hurt? Why are we dying? Run, get out of there.
Yeah, it's an option.
Oh my gosh, I have this group of teenagers. They decided that there was there was a sewer system underneath Valaki. I'm like, there's no sewer. Okay, sure. You guys, this is your story. You climb into the sewers. Okay. And I was like trying to get them out of there. It was a few sessions in. I'm like, we gotta move down, and I'll just like there's going to be a secret way into like the burgomaster's mansion or something, right? Move on to the rest of the story. So I had them fight a Nosferatu from Van Richten's guide, but I like ramped it. It's a pretty difficult monster anyways, but I ramped it up even more because I'm super mean. But they spent all this time fighting it and almost dying, and then they're like, okay, it's dead. I'm gonna look around. I'm gonna throw a fireball down the tunnel to light things up. I'm like, yeah, as one does, sure, go for it. And I'm like, oh, this is my chance to get them out of the tunnel. I'm like, you throw the fireball and you see about 40 more of these crawling your direction along the walls and ceiling. And I like made all the noises and the movements, and they're like, oh, all right, I get my sword ready. I'm like, what?
Yes.
Wait.
They all died, but this group loves all dying and then coming back the next session and figuring out how they came back. So, yeah.
Yeah. When you're dealing with horror, it's like, well, they need to run, but if they don't always, if they don't run, then you're kind of losing an aspect there. We what was it? When we played Curse of Strahd, we had a druid who turned into a giant toad, swallowed Strahd, like when he first. Yeah, but then Strahd was like doing damage to the insides of him, and then he regurgitated him because at that level, we were like whatever level it was where he could turn into a giant toad. But yeah, he was able to swallow Strahd, but Strahd wasn't having it. He got out of there pretty quick.
That reminds me of quite a funny little story when we were play testing the Haunt the first time. Chris Bissett, him and his group play tested the Haunt, and what they did, one of them had a bag of holding, and the bag of holding was big enough to hold a certain little doll. And so what they did was they grabbed the doll, threw it into the bag, tied it up, and no more evil doll problem until they open it back up again. But another adventure, right? And I thought that was just hilarious, right? So I just went, okay, well, from playtesting, I grabbed that and I threw that into the actual module for when I published it. So now there's a bag of holding in the mansion somewhere that people can get and use however they wish. But it was a clever way to get rid of the evil doll.
That was a clever way. Yeah. There were some good fights in that adventure too. I remember running through it last year, and there were some tough fights. So if you haven't played the Haunt, do it. And if you haven't picked up She is the Ancient, do that too. So do you think 5e is designed to make a good horror RPG setting?
I think any setting is good for horror. I think it's what you do with it as a storyteller.
Do you think it has the mechanics to do it? Because
we were saying just earlier, I don't think mechanics are really the big ticket item when dealing with horror. I think it's more around setting that atmosphere and vibe at the table with your players in the moment. And honestly, you can deliver horror in any form and medium, to be honest with you.
I would agree.
And that's the thing with the mechanics. I feel like when people talk about horror mechanics, they're talking about ways to force things on your players, which I don't typically like to do anyways. So it's like, it's just really important to get the player buy-in. It's like, you want to play horror? Let's play horror. And then it's like, there are ways to increase that buy-in. Like, hey, why don't you look in some of the Van Richten's player character options and add in some of that freaky shit, you know, like let's make the vibe exactly what we're looking for.
Spooky trinkets, horror, some kind of horrific background to your character, you know, something that you're scared of.
Now's the time for that, like,
absolutely.
dramatic backstory.
Yeah,
and tell me all about it so I can add it in.
Because you think if you're in a horror realm, you know, if you're in a dreadful realm, you're not going to have a happy life. You know, there's going to be some dread in your history that something's going to creep up later and say, "Hi, I'm back," you know, and scare you. I think, and so I think that's part of the character creation and the player, taking ownership of their character.
Yes,
and I think a lot of it's around.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Jeff. I was just going to say, I think a lot of it's around storytelling techniques. For instance, a lot of people like to shy away from tropes in RPGs, but I think they're really important and easy to use tools, especially for horror, because tropes are there. What they do is they invoke like an automated response to people. They see a trope, they know how they should be reacting to this. You hear, I don't know, a little doll giggling and echoey giggling running past in the background in another room somewhere in this haunted mansion. You know how your character should be reacting to that, right?
You're like, I've seen that movie.
Not going in there.
Exactly right.
Stay out of that room.
And you know what that narrative is leaning into, so players will catch on to that and roll with it more times than not. Anyway,
I specifically pull things like I'll sit down, and I'm a horror movie junkie. Not like, I can't do slashers, but I love like horror, supernatural horror, that kind of thing. And I observe when I'm scared out of my mind, like, what in the world was terrifying about this? And I like to pull that into the games because one, I feel like I can deliver it better if I've experienced it. And two, it's like, I'll even, while I'm running, I'll even blatantly reference to a movie. It's like, this scene here, that, and they're like, oh, like they know, and then they're feeling it. It's like, yes,
that's right. And you set that trigger then, or set that vibe, that atmosphere, and they know how they're meant to feel in that moment.
I like jump scare movies, like The Conjurings and Annabelle. Those are fun. Jaws, that's a good horror movie. You know, that's the beast under the water that's eating people. You don't think of that as horror, but
that whole first scene, you don't even get to the horror.
Yeah,
it's just the thing is there, it's imminent, it's happening, but you never actually see the monster.
Which I'm a big fan of Jaws. I've watched it a few times, and I didn't watch it when I was a kid much because it was scary for me. But since then, I've watched it probably 3 or 4 times the past couple of years, and it's a great story. The acting is great. The cast is great. It's just a great movie. Now that 2, 3, 4, and whatever, no, Jaws 1, stay with that. The aliens movies are great horror movies. You know, you've got the alien who you can't kill, because if you do, it kills you, even though it's not trying to kill you. You know,
love it. Yeah.
And I love all the aliens movies, and Prometheus and the Covenant. I love all those.
Oh my gosh,
the first Alien movie, you barely even saw the alien for most of the movie, right?
Yeah, I tried. So I had my kids watch it the other day, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so bored." I'm like, "No, you don't understand. This is all building up."
Oh,
like, that's not delivered to them on the platter.
You're short attention spans. Dang it.
Yeah.
I tried to get my 16-year-old daughter to watch The Thing, and she couldn't get into it. She walked away. I'm like, "What are you talking about? This is classic,
genius."
Yes,
that's right.
It was redone, but it was genius. But yeah, those movies really give you a lot of inspiration, I think, for horror and writing horror. You know, they say all the adventures that will be written have already been written. You know,
Oh yeah,
it's
for
it's
sure.
all just different ideas on the same topic and the same type of adventure. But it's, you know, the twist that you put on it that makes it different. And horror adventures are kind of the same way. You know, how many times can you tell a spooky mansion story? You know, it's got to be a different story each time, and different realizations and different monsters and that type of thing. Something just that pulls people, that shocks people. Sometimes I think you need to have that shock and awe in an adventure, I believe. um, but let's see. So, yeah, I agree that 5e is perfect for horror. You don't have special mechanics for horror, but I don't think you need them if you've got
Didn't need 'em
the
at all.
writing and the DMing experience and the players, you know, saying, yeah, I want to be scared, and they
Yeah.
accept that as their characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see, horror adventures. Yeah, and we were talking about horror adventures and how they don't have to be blood and gore.
Oh.
A lot of
No.
mine, my latest 3 were body horror, but that's just the way they turned out. Um, there's some disturbing images in some of those adventures, and there's a disclaimer at the bottom of the product page, and on the product itself says, you know, there's this and this and this in this adventure. You may not be aware of your triggers and your players' triggers before you run it. And some people have said this was just too over the top for us. We couldn't do it, but others have loved it. So it's all whatever your table and what you want. Just be aware of that. But I like the ghost story adventures myself, you know, like the haunt, things that unravel.
Yes.
I really enjoyed Christmas Stride when we played it too. I mean, I
It's
ate the
really
pies.
well written. Like it's so well structured.
Yeah, I'll admit I ate the pies. They were good pies, and I still crave them sometimes. But no, there was a lot of cool things in that adventure. And I would love to play it again. I was a player in it. I didn't DM it. My brother DM'd it. He did a great job DMing that adventure. But we did notice there were some things that if you didn't have certain abilities, it became a difficult adventure at the end. Like nobody had dispel magic. And I think at the end, there are these blocks where you have to dispel the magic in the blocks in order to get Strahd or something like that. And we didn't have that. So we kept like being teleported back to a different room or something like that. So, which is okay, because not every adventuring party is going to be equipped to kill Strahd easily. We did it finally, but I think that's okay. It's like going on saying you're going to go out on the ocean and go on go on a ship, and the ship sinks and nobody has any kind of water breathing or water walking spells or any kind of potions or anything like that. Well, you didn't prepare, you know, you don't do that. It's okay. You know, it's not the DM's fault that you didn't think about that. And then you decide to go on the ocean. You know, there's bad things. There's bad things in the D&D realm oceans.
Oh yeah.
Which that would be a fun one. A haunted ocean adventure, a haunted ocean liner.
Yeah, ghost ship.
Yep, ghost ship.
Well, and as far as like puzzles and stuff, like I've noticed a few puzzles have been like they need to do this in order to do, like there was, I don't want to give spoilers, but there's like a head in a certain scene and you have to cast a certain thing on it in order to get it to work. And like my players had it, but they were not putting 2 and 2 together. Like it was not happening. So I was like, okay, we're gonna have to solve this a different way because I really want them to talk to this head.
Yeah.
So letting them be like, okay, what would you like to do? And they're like, I'm gonna try this. And it's like, oh, well, you rolled really well. Sure, that works. Let's tell the story together on how this ridiculous idea works.
Yeah, that's right. It's got to roll with it.
Yeah, there are some spots where the mechanics of the writing of the adventure can cause hangups, like you said. And if you're, you know, it's like, do you stop and not let that happen just because they're not prepared for that situation, or do you make the adjustments and let it go ahead and happen?
Yeah,
you know, that's that might come up with how prepared are you to go off the rails, you know, or do you want to keep going straight down the road?
Yeah, my players are always
confession time
rails,
for me. I've never actually
Wait, what were you gonna say?
Confession time for me. I've never actually read Curse of Strahd.
I've never read it. I've played it.
I've played a little bit of it, and I think we got up to some caravan from memory, with a hag, I think,
Okay.
and that's it. So I've not actually had a lot
You
of
didn't make it to the
experience with
windmill?
Curse of Strahd. I've heard it's good though.
You didn't make it to
Sorry?
Baba Saga's house?
I'm not even sure.
Oh, those are awesome.
To
You're
be
like,
honest
I
with
don't.
Those are great. Well, Phil, if you ever get a chance, you try and play it again. But
yeah, I
it's a
might
fun
try and
one.
run it.
Now, the House of Lament. Jenny, was it fun?
Playtesting. Sorry, my note to Jeff in the background was that I playtested Curse of Strahd, but I actually have not read the entire book myself
I
either.
thought it was House of Lament.
Oh, sorry, both. No.
Okay.
But well, yes, both actually, and yes to both. Both were fun, but like horror's not my shtick.
No, you're not big into horror.
No, but it's apparently been my jam this year, even though I don't
Okay.
like it. I've gotten like
That's how it starts.
3 or 4 horror things that I've edited, and yeah, next somebody's gonna be like, "You want to write one?"
It pulls you in.
Anyways,
Come to the dark
It's
side.
fun. It's fun to tell the story. It's fun to tell a story of horror. You know what happened to the people in the house, and I think it's great because at that time
like
you are
release
becoming
that throughout the adventure.
Yeah, exactly. And at that time you are a writer. There are different kinds of adventures. There are adventures where you can just plop stuff down and it doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to tie together. But if you're writing a horror adventure within a mansion or a set spot, it needs to tie together. There needs to be clues within the horror adventure that says, "Oh, this is why this is like this in this room," or "This is why he's so mad at something." It needs to tell a story throughout the adventure. And I think
it needs to make sense in the player's mind to let them sort of latch onto it and actually feel like that could be a thing. It could be real, and that then further instills that sense of horror too.
I feel like foreshadowing is way more important in horror D&D than any other type of D&D. Like foreshadow a ton and like make sure it's like what you're saying is relevant to that foreshadowing, because otherwise, I mean, unless your intention is to throw them off, which is also fun.
Yep. No, I think the story is really important when you're talking about horror adventure. The narrative is just really it's what draws the characters in, I think. And I think it's just fun to write. Trying to tell that kind of story, and investigations and stories are pretty good too. But I still that horror, the horror is there for me. That's what I enjoy writing. So, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but Jenny Loveday is in the background. We've heard her talk. We might have seen her a couple times, but if you haven't subscribed to her Twitch channel, hit that button. You're retweet this stuff, let people know that you're watching the show, because we appreciate it. And we want Jenny to have all the subscribers that she can have on this channel.
All right, and I'm gonna
smash that like button.
Yeah, smash that like button. I'm gonna pipe in with the thing right now. I am running a Twitter giveaway for the new Wild Beyond the Witchlight book. So if you want me to give you something, you can. Yeah, it is September. You get them for cheaper or something. I don't actually know how that works. But anyways, yeah, you can enter that drawing. Get yourself a book on D&D Beyond.
Do it. Get the book.
Ooh,
it's a good book.
It's an amazing book. You get to be a rabbit. A rabbit.
I haven't cracked it open yet.
I have read the whole thing start to finish twice.
That was fast. What? Wow. Seriously?
Yeah.
That was fast.
Wow.
Well,
yeah.
My next DM's Guild project is going to be regarding it.
Oh, very
it?
good. So now that you've published, do you have the bug now to keep writing?
Oh my God, yes. I was like, I'm just gonna try this. I just want to put it out there, see if anybody likes it. And then I'm like, ooh, that was really fun. I'm gonna have to do that like all the time. So yes.
Just a little warning. Now, this doesn't happen to everybody, but sometimes your next products don't do as well as your first, but hopefully they do.
Happened to me.
Happened to me. Happened to me several times. But you just got to keep you just got to keep writing. You got to keep, if you love it, just keep doing it. And
keep working on that craft,
Yeah. Keep building that craft. And eventually you may, if your next two products or your next product doesn't do as well, your next one might. And I've seen a lot of people fall into this where they'll spend a lot of money because they did so well on their first project. They'll spend a lot of money on the second project and then it
Oh
fails.
no.
Oh yeah.
I don't like what you're saying right now.
Well, it's okay. It doesn't happen to everybody. You might have another hit. I'm just
Sure
I will be prepared.
Okay. I'm just being open.
No, I love it. No,
From
you guys are the
experiences-
pros at this. I'm
From experiences I've had, and it's great when you have something to take off and go crazy, and then when you put so much love and you think you've got your best adventure out there and it doesn't sell, it's like, wow. Because I've got
and honestly, a lot of that comes down to timing and luck as well. To be honest with you, you can write the best thing if the timing and the luck isn't there, then
exactly.
Sometimes it can just fail, and it's happened to me so many times. So many times.
And don't give up on it.
Sometimes you can put out something and it just goes bananas. So.
Yeah. I've had some slow starts too that eventually picked up. And so you just never know what's going to hit. And it could be, some Twitch D&D group picks one up and plays it. And then all their watchers say, oh, okay, we'll pick that up. And then it goes boom. It's all about word of mouth, getting people out there to hear it and to see it. And luck. Yeah. Luck. Yep.
Yeah.
There
absolutely.
is my key to success is good title, good cover, good writing, and luck. It's exactly what it is. And again, not everything sells well. I've got quite a few failures on the guild, but you just keep writing, and you build that back. You build that catalog, and then people see, okay, well, they've done this and this and this, so all right, I'll give this one a shot. My name's on like 100 products
as well.
Do what?
They've got a long tail as well, these products. They might not go bam straight away, but they will keep selling and selling forever and a day. And every time you release something new, everybody looks at what else you've done, and that previous titles ribbon on the product page. People see that and they go to those and they add those to their carts. And every time you release something, it's just promoting all your previous work as well. So
yeah,
being
that's what
prolific is pretty good.
Someone was just I was just talking to somebody the other day about continuing on DM's Guild, and they were saying that exact same thing, that every time you publish something new, it's promoting your previous work. Exactly. So it's like it's never a waste.
Yeah.
I mean, and plus you wrote something. How could that possibly be a waste?
Right.
You're like,
it's not a waste.
If
you love doing it, it's not a waste of time or anything.
Yeah.
And don't be sure to put in the back or somewhere within your adventure an advertisement for your other one. Because people who haven't seen She is the Ancient may pick up this other one and say, oh, she wrote that too. Okay, I'll pick that up. This is just, you got to promote constantly. It's the worst part of the job. I tell you what, if you're
entrepreneur life,
it's a hard job to make money at, that's for sure. Some people have better luck at it than I do, making connections and working with other people, but it's been a lot of fun. I wouldn't give this up for anything.
It's like a game. Wait, it's a game.
It's a game within a game.
Game within a game.
Yeah. Actually, I've said this before, that when you're writing an adventure, it's a lot like writing code for a computer, because there's a program to writing the adventure. It has to have the mechanics, the treasure, and all this kind of stuff. And you're writing DC 15 wisdom saving throw. You got to do all if thens. Yep. So that's how when I'm writing, I'll sit down and think, I'm writing code right now. I just don't know it. It's all zeros and ones. It really is. It's all zeros and ones if you were to break it down. Right. So right. Have either of you read Van Richten's?
I have read it. I've read it a couple times, but I haven't done hands-on stuff with it yet. So therefore my ADHD has not retained all of it as much as I would like, but I'm working on a campaign in one of the domains currently, bringing that up. But that's the only one I know about really well. Yeah,
I've skimmed it. I've looked at parts of it. I do like the monsters at the back of the book. There's some really cool ones. They brought back the Looparoo, and the Nosferatus are on there. Some early other great adventures.
Those are fun to play.
Yeah. But yeah, it really does break down in chapter 4 how to make things scary for your table. And then you've got the types of horror, which are body horror, cosmic horror, dark fantasy, folk horror, ghost story, gothic horror, which, folk horror, would that be like, oh, I don't know, folk
Have you
stories?
seen? I
Think
would
like
think
The
that that'd
Village.
be
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
You seen The Village, like that
Yeah.
kind of that isolation, that like multi-generational trauma, like belief system based kind of thing. That's where you get like the witches in the woods and
Okay.
that
I like
kind of
that.
thing.
Have you seen Fear Street on Netflix at all
No,
yet?
I haven't watched that. Is that any good?
It's
Yeah, really
if
good.
you don't like slasher, I
I'll
Yeah.
watch
skipped
slasher.
most of it. Like I definitely watched it. It had a really great ending, but also I was like, woo, like a lot.
Really? That,
Yeah.
But yeah,
Ah,
That's right.
that'd
So,
be
so
folk horror, right?
it's got elements of folk horror in it for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
now, have either of you watched Train to Busan?
No,
Never heard
I'm
of it.
writing it down though right now. What is
Train-
it?
Yeah.
Train to Busan. Train to
Train?
Busan. Busan. It's a zombie horror flick, and it is like these zombies act the way they're supposed to act. They just keep running and piling on each other and everything. It's a great movie. It's subtitled, but it's
Cool.
good. So yeah, that's a really good
On
zombie
the
flick.
list.
I like zombie movies. I got into The Walking Dead for a little while. I never finished it. But yeah, zombie movies are fun. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that's a great horror movie. I don't know if you remember that from the 80s.
The original.
The 80s, yeah.
I remember that.
It's a fun series too. And cosmic horror. So cosmic horror would be like Lovecraft, is that right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which
Absolutely.
there's a Lovecraft series, I think, on HBO.
Yes. it
Highly
is.
recommend it. Highly
Lovecraft
recommend it.
Country.
Lovecraft
Country.
Lovecraft,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
Oh, it's so good.
It's
Is it
really
good?
cool. Yeah.
I haven't
yeah.
checked that yet. I'll
Yeah.
check that out. I'll start that tonight. And then gothic horror. So is that more like Vampire the Masquerade type feel?
Yes.
Yeah,
Curse of Strahd
yeah.
is kind of like it. Curse of Strahd covers pretty, like you can put all of it in there, but it's
Uh-huh.
really known as like that gothic horror.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
think there's a lot of emphasis on, I want to say like like the emotional stuff, so like romance and things like that, but then also your classic monsters like vampires and
Right.
Yeah.
Did any of your players find Strahd romantic? You know what I mean? Because he's supposed to have that gothic debonair feel to him, where he's mysterious and
so my players, I'm having a problem where they mostly have wanted to side with her in mine. And I'm like, okay, but so then I like up the atrocities. I'm like, but look at it, doing all these horrible things. They're like, but she's so smart about it, and like she's so cool. And I'm like, okay, so this is how we're gonna run it. All right, cool.
yeah. It's kind of like we were playing
a whole
Rise
new
of T-
spin on it.
we were playing Tiamat, and towards the end it was like, well, maybe Tiamat's not that bad, because we were about to get beat. We could,
Yeah.
we were just here testing out your minions, and we'd like to join up. But that was a good game too.
I like to make
Yeah.
villains that like they make sense. Where you
Sure.
could look at why they're. It's not like, so. Have you guys ever seen Far From Home Spider-Man? Like,
Yep.
Yes.
spoiler alert ahead, if anybody hasn't seen it. So the bad guy, he's mad because somebody named his invention Barf, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so angry," right? And I'm like, okay, obviously there's more reason than that, but I'm like, really, like it took me out of the movie. I hate
Right.
that. I
Yeah.
love villains with really good reasons where you're kind of like, I see your points. I get it.
But you're going about this the wrong way.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of that, villains can be seen can have really good agendas. They just just doing it about the wrong way. Killmonger
yes.
is mentioned there.
Absolutely.
But and when the agenda is outside the majority of the norm, it's where it's considered evil or they're a villain.
Yeah.
And we've seen that throughout history, which is sad in some cases, but creating that good horror villain is always fun. And just good villains in general are a lot of fun. I love writing villains, backstories,
Oh my gosh, me too.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and it's like make it make sense, but also check in with, because the players are the protagonists of the story. They are the Harry Potter of Harry Potter. And
Yeah.
so, what are their goals? What would go against their goals? Okay, that's how you make it, it's like you're relatable, but I got to fight you anyways.
Yeah. Bring them into the story. Definitely. So Alan Tucker says, what's the most important element to get right to have a good horror session?
So many things. For me, I like to dim the lighting. It's all about making that atmosphere at the table. I love dimming the lighting, which has a really good effect by bringing the table closer in. It really brings everyone right into the middle here. No distractions, or less distractions outside of the table, and really brings everybody in, even candlelit. And what that can do is really get everybody to sort of buy into the story that you're doing, and everybody's present.
Well, that makes me want to really do in-person D&D.
Yeah, sorry, I'm
replicate that on Zoom.
We are playing in person at the moment. I apologize.
That's amazing.
Beth, is that how most of your games are, is on Zoom?
Oh, I played my very first in-person D&D game at Gen Con a couple weeks ago. I mean, I play with my kids. I've got 4 kids, and so I have my own D&D party, and we play all the time. But with adults, first time in person was last weekend. So yeah, I can see how literally setting the atmosphere would be mind-blowing.
Yeah, we're playing Rime of the Frostmaiden right now, and the DM built a little map table that's raised up about 4 inches off the table. He put LED lights like Jenny has here. Everyone gets an LED tea light. Well, he put little LED lights underneath it, so when we're in the snow, he changes it to blue, so it's glowing blue underneath the map, and red when we're in battle, and white. It's really cool,
and that really sets atmosphere. It just gets your mind thinking in certain ways. It's a really good tool for storytelling.
Yeah. And other people have mentioned music, having little horror tunes in the background. You hear that a lot on music. You hear that a lot on streams. When people are streaming their D&D sessions, you'll hear a background tune going, or they're using their battle bards music and whatnot. Pacing of the narrative, I think, and the way you set up the narrative, because if you're just reading the vampire standing there waiting to bite the neck of the person, blah blah blah. But if you're really getting into it, explaining, using gestures and voices and that type of thing, I think that really builds the horror too.
Yeah, sure.
But
also talking in delivering it in low tones as well, I think. Really bringing it down, I think, and then that gives you the opportunity to just go bang, and everyone gets that jump scare,
right?
I think it really helps you set that tone.
Bring them in, pace it, change the pacing to go faster in the right moment, slower to really.
Yeah. Well, we are unfortunately almost out of time, so I want to give you both a chance to go ahead and give your social medias again. I do donate $20 to a charity of each of your choice. Phil donated to the Smith House, is that right?
The Smith family, it's a charity here in Australia that helps out disadvantaged families.
Mm-hmm. And Beth, your donation went to Jasper's Game Day. So $20 was sent to each one of those. Appreciate that very much for both choosing those charities. And Beth, again, where can we find you on social media?
At little @ right? Just it's Beth the Bard. Da-da-da, on everything. It's all of it.
On everything. Gotcha. That's great that you can have it on everything.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I had to put the "it's" in front of it. Otherwise, I couldn't. So.
Very good. Phil, what about you?
At PB Publishing 1 on Twitter. That's really where I'm most present. On Facebook, just look for PB Publishing. You'll probably find me.
And remember to go
not from Ginny.
No, there are many PB Publishings, and it's very difficult to find you. That's why I just tagged you.
Yeah, just look for me. I'm talking everywhere on everything.
Remember to go out and buy your copy of She is the Ancient and the trilogy, or the Haunt, the trilogy. And everybody, I hope you learned a few things. I did during this talk. Both of you, thank you for being on. Jenny, thank you for being in the background there and running the show. And again, thank you both for being on. Everybody else, you'll have great horror adventures in the horror Halloween season, and enjoy. Until next time. See ya.
See you guys.
You're good.